You know, marriage is kind of like football, don't you think? A lot of false starts and unsportsmanlike conducts. But seriously, I was thinking about it and I recognized there are some football principles that can improve a marriage. And after playing football for 15 years all the way through college and being married almost 14 years, I can see some similarities. So here are four principles from football that can improve a marriage. Team over self, this is foundational to football. You're brought together as a team to fulfill a purpose that you could not fulfill by yourself. And Saquon Barkley was a good example of this a few weeks ago. He decided to sit out the last game of the regular season, missed the chance to break a record so that he can be fresh for his team in the playoffs. Now, the Eagles, y'all better win a championship now because I wanted Saquon to get that record. But this is a great example. And I believe God has brought man and woman together in marriage to dominate the earth together. So whether it's raising kids together or building financial literacy and a legacy together so that for the next 100 years your offspring are not going paycheck to paycheck, whether it's building a spiritual legacy together, building a business together, or going and traveling the world together, make sure in 2025 you not only have personal goals, but you have goals for you and your spouse so that you're both at the top of the mountain together. I'm the person who wants to just go and climb the next mountain, but I had to think about it. Am I allowing my wife to develop her gifts, her abilities, and her talents? Because at the end of the day, I don't want to be there fully developed and fully grown and my wife is not growing as well. So just make sure you're thinking about that, guys. Team over self. You want to have a fully developed wife so you can be fully fulfilled together and achieve your purposes together. And once you have those clear goals that you're going to meet together, clear roles is the next step. When you don't have clear roles, it leads to frustration and resentment. Travis Kelce, great tight end, but if he tries to throw the ball 30 times a game, it's going to end in frustration. Patrick Mahomes, great quarterback, but if he tries to start dancing like Travis, it's going to end in frustration. Me and my wife talk about our roles, and we discuss it from time to time, and here are some points on roles. Because you're coming from different backgrounds, roles cannot be assumed, they must be discussed. Also, recognize that roles may change from season to season. My wife is usually the one cooking in the house. But after she's had a child, she has to have that recovery period. So I can't expect her to cook like she did before. So it's up to me to carry that responsibility, make some grilled cheese or get DoorDash to provide for the family. There's also some roles that I believe will not change. I believe as the man of the house, I'm called to lead. So that's not going to change. And the last thing on roles, your role does not make you better than the other person. We are called to complete one another to fulfill the purposes of the team. We're not called to compete against one another. So get those roles straight, operate in those roles, and go full speed ahead. Now, once you have your goals and you have your roles, feedback is key, man. Now, on a football team, that film session is that mechanism for feedback. And the film does not lie. You went left here when you should have went right. You're not giving 100% effort over here. And honestly, nobody wants to hear when they're not doing right or when they need to get better. But we have to remember that feedback in film sessions is not to bash the other person. It's to get better. It's to make adjustments so that you can fulfill the purposes that you're supposed to be fulfilling. I asked my wife a while back, what are 3 things you need from me in this season? She said, more prayer, more affection, more date nights. That makes me better to know what she needs. Now it's up to me to fulfill those requests. So let me ask you a question. Do you feel comfortable in your relationship giving and receiving feedback on parenting, on sex, on the budget, on any of these different areas that are so important for us to talk about as couples? Here's a couple tips on feedback. Firstly, don't wait until a crisis to want to start talking about how you feel about a certain situation. Also, when you're giving constructive criticism, watch your tone because tone matters, and try to use I statements. For example, I feel disrespected when you contradict me in front of the kids. When you use I statements, it makes it seem to your partner that you're not blaming them, you're just expressing how you're feeling, and it makes them more receptive to what you're trying to say. Also, remember, positive feedback is not illegal. If your spouse is doing something that you appreciate, make sure you let them know. My wife tells me all the time, do I look pretty? You didn't tell me I look pretty. I'm like, well, I thought about it. I just didn't tell you. So make sure we are voicing what we feel inside when our spouse is doing something that we appreciate. And finally, if you're having issues with feedback and you might need an outside voice. So don't be afraid to get outside help when that feedback is just being hindered. Now, lastly, perseverance is required to succeed. Now, this is a mindset shift. I find it interesting that out of 58 Super Bowl teams, only one team has gone from the beginning of the season to the end undefeated. The other 57 teams had to deal with losses, had to deal with setbacks and disappointments. Yet at the end of the season, they were still crowned the champions. And this is good news for us in marriage because every season is not going to be great. Every season is not going to be peaches and cream, but we can persevere and still have a great marriage. When me and my wife received the autism diagnosis for our second child, that was not a great season for us. When we were in and out of couples counseling sessions trying to work on our marriage, that was a time of healing and rebuilding. So if you're going through a tough season, understand that you are not alone. Pinpoint your issues, work on yourself, be proactive, and understand you can get unstuck. And God can turn your test into a testimony. I'm a living witness of that. Those are the 4 football principles. Know your goals, know your roles, give feedback, make adjustments, and persevere. Now let's go run the play and be great. Thanks.